Good morning and welcome to Bold Business. I'm David Grasso from Gen FKD, an organization that helps millennials acquire the skills they need to succeed. Our regular co-anchor, Selena Hill, digital editor at Black Enterprise, is here to help shake things up and push back when necessary. You're good at that.
Absolutely.
Before we begin this week's episode, of course, we want to send our thoughts and prayers to the victims of the violence in Charlottesville. Very sad.
Very sad.
Anyway, moving on with our headline segment, we discuss 3 thought-provoking stories that will start today's conversation. To help break down these stories, we have Ida Johannes from Black Enterprise. Welcome, Ida.
Hi, happy to be here.
Good
morning.
Happy to have you, Ida. We've been working on this for quite a while, so here we go.
Yes.
Our first headline comes to us from blackenterprise.com, and it is about how your coworkers are not your friends. The author described a situation where a coworker felt betrayed by the actions of a fellow colleague. The author reminds us that while you may love your job and all the people you work with, you have to remind yourself that you're in a business environment. The workplace is not a place for genuine friendships, and you should keep your eye on the ball and remind yourself to leave your emotions at the door. So my question is, do you have friends at work? Hey, Ida, you and Selena are friends, right?
Yes, I do have friends at work, and I think that you can find great people at work, but I would say that there is a certain professionalism that you have to have when going to work, and there's certain things that you shouldn't say and shouldn't tell your coworkers and leave your personal life at home. But I think it's great to have, I think it's a healthy environment at a workplace to be friends with your coworkers, but definitely don't cross a certain line and just keep it very professional.
What do you think, Selena?
I think you can be friendly at work, but I agree with the article. I think that there are certain borderlines and boundaries that happen in the workplace that you should never cross. Like Ida just said, you shouldn't share your personal business with your coworkers, and that shows you automatically that they're not really your friends like that. A friend is someone that I can cry to, I can complain about a boss to, I can, just really expose myself and be 100% transparent. However, when I'm working and I'm in that environment, I'm putting on my best self. I'm trying to keep my emotions at home because I'm a woman and I'll get stereotyped if I ever look like I have an emotion. But I think that you just need to remain cognizant of where you are. Now, don't get me wrong. Ida is a great intern. She's a digital intern at Black Enterprise. I love her to death. But I think that once she goes back to school, then we can probably talk about a friendship.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a fine line. I think both of you have good points. I think I'm friends with a lot of people at work, but when it comes down to business, I can't let emotions get in the way of business.
Absolutely.
And that's the whole trick right there. Yeah, and we all genuinely like each other.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky to have a great workplace environment, but yeah, when it comes down to it, we have certain goals and we can't let our feelings get in the way.
Absolutely, but I will add that studies also show that when you have those social interactions at work, they're very important in maintaining just a balance. Like, you don't want to go to an environment where you hate the people and where you hate where you are. So you want to be very social. So I will just say that make sure you have balance.
Okay, moving on. Our next headline comes to us from thehill.com and is an op-ed about the billions of dollars in government subsidies that Elon Musk companies have received. Musk companies, which include Tesla, SpaceX, and SolarCity, are some of the most innovative companies in America. Tesla's Model 3, a fully electric car, has just been released and is quickly becoming a bestseller. The Hyperloop, a jaw-dropping proposal to whisk people around in tubes across America, has also captured our imagination. So overall, there's little doubt that Musk is a thought leader and one of America's most notable entrepreneurs. But this article points out that behind much of this success, there's government largesse, to the tune of $5 billion between all of his ventures. The author of this article says that Elon needs to take his hand out of the taxpayer's pocket. She says that this level of taxpayer support amounts to crony capitalism, and that Musk needs to wean himself off of government subsidies. So my question for the panel, does Elon need his hand in our pockets, or are those subsidies well invested?
I believe that they're well invested. I consider myself an entrepreneur myself, and just as a taxpayer, future taxpayer as well, I think that as a society, we want to continue to move forward. We want to continue to improve, and technology advancements. This country is important. We're one of the leading countries, so I think these advancements are super important, and we should put money into research, and that's how we'll move forward as a society. So I think these are very important, and personally, I love to see us put a lot of money into sustainable energy, renewable energy. I think these are something that could help our environment as well. So I think these are great causes to put our money into and to see where the future takes us.
What do you think, Selena?
I agree with Ida. I mean, let's just take into account that this article was written by a member of the Tea Party. So we know their perspective already. But listen, because I read the article and I'm just like, okay. And then I read her bio and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. But I agree with Ida. I think that Elon Musk, it's not just about profit motive for him. He is trying to make this world a better place. And one of the things he's trying to do is combat climate change and global warming, something that our president is not trying to do because he is a climate change denier.
Oh boy, here comes politics.
not to infuse politics into the business discussion, but I think that it is well invested, just like Ida said.
Yeah.
You know, we're running out of time, but I'm going to go with I agree with both of you. I think it's money well invested in Elon Musk. I'm a big fan myself. But
Absolutely.
yeah, hopefully in the future, he won't need as many subsidies as he needs now.
Hopefully we can get him on the show.
Oh, well, from your mouth to God's ears.
Absolutely.
Our third headline comes to us from circa.com and is about electricity bills and how they're decreasing due to smaller gadgets. Reporter Daniel Bean points out that we have more gadgets than ever, but the government reported a 7% dip in electricity costs per person in recent years. This is because our gadgets are shrinking and growing more efficient as well. Consumers are using more laptops and smartphones instead of desktop computers, watching less TV, and using cloud computing for storage. These shifts in behavior, along with energy-efficient appliances, are helping reduce energy consumption. These gains may reverse as gadgets become more electrified in the future, but in the meantime, efficiency gains are becoming more noticeable. So, despite all this stuff, Ida, see how small it is?
Yes.
Despite all this stuff, it's becoming more efficient. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. I think that we're using our energy smarter. And I think that's what we are going to continue to do. We're going to continue to use our energy smarter. But the more and more everything gets electrified, like everything is from your toothbrush to your mirrors to everything, I think it's going to continue to get more electrified as we go on in the future. So I could see it not being, in the long term, I could see us, the energy prices continue to go up. Like I could see us using more energy.
But for right now, we have less energy consumption. What do you think there, Selena?
Yeah, no, I would tend to agree with that as well. I think that we're going to have to find a way to sort of like monetize like the Wi-Fi and everything else that we use, since we aren't necessarily using traditional forms of energy. We're using a different type of mechanism to sort of like get things done in our livelihood. So,
But our laptops are smaller. We're watching less TV. All this stuff means energy consumption is going down. We don't save things on our hard drive. We save things on the cloud computing. We save things on Google Drives, services like that. It's a lot less energy consumption, at least for the time being. But
Yes.
Ida's right. Like everything's becoming electrified.
So in the long term, I think that maybe we might, it won't continue to go down. I don't think that formula will add up in the end. So
And the author does warn of that.
Yeah, I
That,
agree.
like even your microwave,
Yeah.
had that funny thing about microwaves being used to spy. They're becoming increasingly electrified.
I see it happening. You never know what's going to happen in the future, so I see that happening. That could be a potential output. Like that could happen. So
Well, thank you, Ida, for joining us.
thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So next, we'd like to welcome a familiar face. She's the CEO and founder of Bolt, Carrie Sheffield. How you doing?
Carrie, hey.
Morning.
Very vibrant in the pink. I love it.
So Carrie's here to help us kick off our next segment, and we have a very special guest joining us via Skype. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial and one of the original sharks on the hit show Shark Tank. Kevin has launched more than 20 businesses and brought more than 500 products to market that have generated more than $5 billion in sales worldwide. Do we have Kevin there?
Hey, I'm here. How you doing? Great to say hello, guys.
Good morning, Kevin.
Thank you so
Good
much
morning.
we're so excited to talk to you this morning, Kevin. So, we have so many questions, but how did you build this empire? How did you do it?
Well, it all started back in the early 80s. I was watching television, just got cable TV. Got to remember those early days of cable. And Discovery Channel, I turned it on and there was bars on the screen. And I called the cable company and they said, well, Discovery's only an 18-hour-a-day channel. 6 hours a day, they don't have programming because it was a new startup channel. Think about that, the early days of cable, right? And so I started putting products on. I cut a deal with the cable operator and then Discovery Channel to put products on to fill their downtime. And so I was filling 6 hours a day with kitchen products and then Tony Little fitness products and the Jack LaLanne juicer and, George Foreman, and it keep going on and on from there. So, it was a very eureka moment for me to see 6 hours of unused time. And then it was just a matter of just really filling up the airwaves with great products.
That's awesome, Kevin. And as TV entrepreneurs ourselves, we really respect what you've done. But in terms of, disruption, so you were selling a ton of products, you were filling hours of airtime with products. What about Amazon now? Like, it seems like technology has totally disrupted your business model. How do you compete with what's happening with Amazon? I mean, I use Amazon for pretty much everything, and they do all the product placement for you, and it's all based on algorithms and computers.
Yes. So obviously there's been some changes in the world. That number one, the TV marketplace has changed. 50% fewer viewers on TV today than there was 10 years ago. ESPN has lost 13 million subscribers over the last number of years. But what we're doing is following the eyeballs. Okay, so when things get disrupted, you've got to just figure out how do you play in the new game. So 5 years ago, when people were migrating away from television towards Facebook and Amazon, et cetera, we started migrating our ads in that direction also. So we do a lot of business on Amazon. For example, yes, it is. Amazon is doing very, very well in many of their different categories. But understand this, I'm in the business of creating unique products. And so when we first launch something unique, it doesn't exist on Amazon or anywhere else. So we will launch it in a digital fashion now. We'll launch it on a Facebook. We do a test. Then we start all of our engines. We go into catalogs. We go into As Seen on TV. We go into retail stores. And then we go into Amazon also. So we don't look so much like Amazon as our competitor as they can actually be a good partner.
Interesting.
And a major account for us.
That's the way to think about it, for sure. And what about in terms of just like when you look at Amazon, like how do you decide what product to put there? Like what makes a product stand out to you? Because you clearly have that Midas touch where when you touch something, it goes viral. What makes a product stand out?
Well, it's one of the things I go to tons of trade shows. I go to the houseware show, hardware, fitness, the beauty shows, et cetera, about 25 of those a year looking for hot new products. So when we launch something innovative, it's generally, like I said, not even already on Amazon. So when we put it up, we'll be the first ones up with that product in many cases. Sometimes what we do, a strategy, is to create something similar ourselves. I say, we kind of knock ourselves off, so to speak, which is kind of an interesting concept. Before our competitor can copy us, we sometimes will create our own version 2, and with different features, price points, benefits, et cetera. So, there is a lot of strategy in today's marketplace on how to get the most out of the asset that we create.
Absolutely, Kevin. I know that you wrote a book about how you turned these ideas into multi-million-dollar businesses. Can you talk about some of the strategies or success tips that you actually laid out in the book?
Yeah, so, I look for a few key things. I look for something that's mass market, that appeals to as many people as possible, but it also should be unique and unique enough such that there's no other product or service that solves a similar problem that this product would solve. So I look for a mass market problem solver that's unique, that nothing else is similar to. And that's very powerful. But then this is the next step that's important. Is there some kind of a magical transformation that you get with the product? And that's now when you're starting to do the visual aspects of what we do on TV. And this is now demonstration and showing the power of the product and demonstrating it. Much like if you watch HSN or QVC, the most powerful segments on the shopping channels are when they come out and they can start demonstrating the product and showing sort of visualizations of before and after and these magical transformations. So that's one of the most powerful things that we look for.
Kevin, you've enjoyed a great deal of success. What drives you to continue? What makes you wake up in the morning?
So, nowadays what I do is, there's a quote, one of the famous one of the greatest motivational and sales closers in the world is a guy named Zig Ziglar. If you can think back a few years, and Zig, God bless, passed away about 3 or 4 years ago now. But Zig, he had a quote that if you want everything in life, you help enough other people get what they want, and then it'll come to you. So I think, after many years of, building businesses and kind of being more entrepreneurially centered on myself, now I'm working with organizations like the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. It's called CEO. It's a nonprofit organization based right here in Tampa. The CEO is on 270 campuses around the world, actually, and these are entrepreneurial college students. And so I'm a mentor and an advisor to the CEO, and I just really love kind of giving back now to the entrepreneurial community. And so I spend time, I go on the road and I meet with these college entrepreneurs, and by the way, some of them have some great ideas and maybe something that could be partnered with in the process. So
yes, Kevin, we would love to get them on board. We would love to have them on our show. So send them our way for sure. Kevin, I know you just put out a tweet about kind of almost like micro investors. I think for a lot of people who watch our show who are millennials, they might feel intimidated by the word investor. They think that you have to have deep pockets, you have to have millions of dollars. But what you tweeted out was you could have $1,000, and I would imagine you could have $500 or $200, or it's really more of a mindset. Can you talk more about that in terms of being an investor with a smaller amount of money?
There's so many investment opportunities out there, and I'll run into an inventor that has a great invention idea. He doesn't have the money to file for patents, and it might only be $2,000 or $3,000. So I'll say to them, well, look, I may be interested, but maybe find a partner that will put up the couple $1,000, or maybe $1,000 to file a provisional patent. So yes, I invest in a lot of things, but I tell people you need to understand how to go get investors, and sometimes it's all the way down at that $500 or $1,000 level that you can get involved in something exciting. And so you maybe invest in the patent, maybe you invest in the prototype, or the mold making part of the process. So there's all different kinds of investments at every different level, and I just say to people, just get creative in how you look at getting involved in deals.
Well, that's fantastic. Kevin, it's been a pleasure to have you. It's been a year since I saw you at Freedom Fest. So to all our viewers, definitely check out Freedom Fest. It's a conference in Las Vegas, and Kevin is a regular speaker there. Fun fact about Kevin Harrington, he lives in Gary Sheffield's former house. And as someone named Carrie Sheffield, we hit that off.
Well, Carrie, thank you as always.
Great to be here today, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. And thank you, Carrie, always for stopping by Bold Business.
Thank you, of course.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Next, we're joined by Mark Drapeau. He's a business and transformation strategist. He's a brainy Renaissance man with a Ph.D. in behavioral neurogenetics. God, I can even barely say that, and he has a Ph.D. in it.
Right.
His work has appeared in the New York Times, on CNN, Bloomberg, and Wired. And he's taking a sip of water now. How you doing, Mark?
I'm great.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
So, tell us about your work.
Whoa, where to begin? Well, I started my career as a scientist. Back then, that's all I wanted to be. I wanted to be an academic and do experiments and discover the answers to problems. And after about 10 years of that, I discovered for a variety of reasons it wasn't what I wanted to do for my whole life. And I got a great fellowship that brought me to Washington, D.C., where I still live. I worked for about 3 years for the Defense Department, doing a variety of things. One of the things I worked on there was the rise of social media and how it was intersecting with government.
Which is still very relevant.
Still very partially my fault, I suppose. I wrote the first government research paper that really promoted this as a useful tool. So there were pros and cons, but the government was falling behind at the end of the Bush administration. Obama, of course, got elected and was a proponent and user of these technologies. And now we see where we are today. But that kind of took me on a journey into the private sector and technology, and here we are.
Yeah, speaking of intersecting government with social media, a couple years back, you wrote a piece about how the CIA can use Twitter effectively. You may not even remember it, or maybe you do remember it.
I remember it.
It was pretty good.
maybe I won't admit that I remember it.
Well, so the question I have for you today, do you think our president is using social media, particularly Twitter, in an effective manner to reach not only his coalition, but the American people?
I think it's really complicated. Certainly you can have a fair debate over his tone of voice and whether he comments on this or that specific thing. But in general, just like with Obama and other leaders, he is reaching an audience that he wants to reach. And there are millions of people out there that like what he says and retweet. And of course, there are people that disagree, again, just like Obama. So, his tone and cadence is definitely different and unique, but not necessarily surprising. I think it's a fair matter for debate about whether or not he's being quote unquote successful. It's complicated. I think he would definitely say he is.
So you deal a lot with innovation. Great question, by the way, Selena. You deal a lot with innovation and the importance of innovation, not just in the public sector, but also in the private sector. What's your spiel on innovation and the importance of it in our daily lives?
Yeah, I mean, innovation is such a buzzword. What does it mean? A lot of what I think about these days is transformation. Everything is changing so fast. The rise of startups, the power of digital. These kinds of giant forces are affecting everything. 100-year-old businesses, 10-year-old businesses. I've done a lot of work with GE, which is over 100 years old, and they've been going through a digital transformation. You've probably seen commercials about how they're a digital industrial company, right? I also have done some work with Politico. Politico's a 10-year-old company that was a big disruptor when it was founded, and now they find themselves at a crossroads. What is next for them as more and more media companies cover the political space? Upstarts like Bold and Axios are just coming on the scene at a faster and faster rate. So all these companies need to transform. And it's sort of three different things. It's business transformation. How do you make money and have new business lines and continue to experiment? Brand transformation. How do people think about your brand? And what are you signaling to your audiences or your potential customers or whatnot? And digital transformation. The underlying digital change that is affecting everything: sales, marketing, communications, technologies, products, everything. So that's kind of how I think about it, as three prongs that kind of overlap in a Venn diagram.
Absolutely. Now, I feel like some traditional companies, like you said, GE and other brands, have been a little more reluctant to actually embrace the digital space. Some people actually thought that it was going to phase out, and they've been behind the curve. Is there any hope for those type of companies that are really that late to getting on board in digital?
I think, GE is ahead of the curve in the sense that they, considering what a big business they are and what kind of a traditional business they are, they were pretty quick to kind of figure out, what does this mean for us? And they still make these big machines, as they say. They make power turbines and wind turbines and jet engines. But now those things are all digital, which a lot of people don't necessarily realize, but they're collecting data and analyzing it. And the big machines are connected to each other, like the Internet of Things. So they built an industrial Internet of Things, and they have software that runs that, right? So they're ahead of the curve, but they're an exception to the rule. There are companies now that are having these conversations actively and doing different things to transform. It's not too late for them, but in every case, whether it's a bank or a tech company or an industrial company or whatever, they have to figure out, what does this mean for us? That doesn't necessarily mean having a Snapchat channel or something. For GE, it means industrial Internet of Things and big data. For Microsoft or Politico, it means different stuff. There are other companies, perhaps, that maybe aren't having this conversation yet. They might be in trouble. It's hard to say. It's a very long curve, and I don't really know exactly where we are in it. But if you're not having these conversations about these things and you work at a relatively traditional kind of organization, you should probably start thinking very hard about it.
Well, Mark,
Absolutely.
Great answers to your questions. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mark.
Pleasure.
Absolutely.
Next, we have Vera Gibbons, a veteran financial journalist. She's the founder of nonpoliticalnews.com, a go-to resource for those who are sick and tired of the negative political headlines. I'm never sick and tired of that, by the way. Welcome, Vera.
I am.
Thank you, Will.
It's entertaining. I can't get enough. So,
And
seriously.
there's some people who can't get enough,
Yes.
and then there's my market who they're tired of the saturation, they're tired of the bombardment, and they want other news, and they're looking for a diversion, and that's where I come in.
So,
Great idea.
absolutely. When did
Huge
you
fan.
come up with this idea?
So last summer, during the height of the political tensions before we had President Trump in office, I was really getting tired of all the ranting and raving on Facebook, the defriending. I was going to cocktail parties, people were bringing up politics. I thought,
gosh, can't we just get along?
Didn't your parents teach you no politics, no religion?
Nope, exactly. Well, that was my thought initially, but they kept going on, and I said, aren't there other things to be talking about? Hence the launch of nonpoliticalnews.com.
Wow.
Wow.
So every day, into the night, into the morning, I scan the headlines. I don't have a life right now. And I curate sort of the top headlines in consumer personal finance, health and wellness, fashion, beauty, and fitness and diet. And then the email goes out to my growing base of subscribers every morning at 7 a.m. Boom. In their mailbox, they get to see what's going on outside the world of politics. And again, it is a diversion from the bombardment.
It's so saturated with political news. I mean, when you open even like a physical paper, imagine millennials reading a physical paper. Only in the Delta Lounge do I do that. But when you look at the front of a paper, it's all politics.
Well, that's part of the problem too. As a longtime financial journalist, it was a lot easier to get on air to do my financial segments, to do my consumer segments. We were all sidelines, experts like myself, legal analysts, some of the other people who were regular people on the networks, NBC, CBS, Fox News. It was challenging to get on unless you had a political angle, which I don't have. So that was another reason why I started nonpoliticalnews.com, because I thought, geez, I have nothing to contribute to the news that is political. I've got to contribute something else entirely. And this has been it's been a lot of work, but I'm really enjoying it.
How would you say your consumers or your base have been receiving nonpoliticalnews.com? Is it growing? Do they say, you know what, this is a refreshing breath of fresh air?
Yes. It's funny because people, my primary base of subscribers, which is both conservatives and liberals, basically people who do want that diversion, they're telling me that they open it first thing in the morning right after they look at Skim. So, and if you look at my open rate, it's like 60%, and it happens primarily between 7 and 8 a.m.
Wow.
So they're having their coffee, they're scanning the headlines, they're looking to seeing what's going on outside the world of politics. Boom, they open it. They're clicking on some of the more interesting stories that are relevant to their lives. My base is primarily women because it is lifestyle content, but I do have a growing base of men too because they're fascinated in what's going on in the mind of the woman. What are they interested in? What's the new diet trick? What's the new beauty cream? Oh, Halo Top has a new flavored ice cream? Wow, I didn't know that. So it's interesting to see sort of the guys come on board as well.
So question, we are technically a non-political show ourselves, but politics inevitably comes up. So what's your guideline for something that can be a nonpoliticalnews.com headline?
Well, Halo Top has a new limited edition pumpkin flavor, for example.
So really non-political.
That's in today's edition. Millennials are charging everything on their credit cards. That's in
Of course we do.
edition.
This is
Hawaii. Those round-trip flights now are coming onto the market for round-trip of under $350. That's a non-political headline. The bodybuilder who died from too much protein before a big competition, that's a non-political headline that is generating a lot of traffic today. So they're out there.
But I can definitely appreciate just something that goes beyond politics, because it's like you can wake up, skim your newsletter, skim the headlines, and then you'll probably be bombarded with something outrageous that the president did. So I think to wake up and to expand your role outside of politics so that you're not infuriated the first thing in the morning. Well, I'm talking about myself, I'm sorry. So I'm not infuriated the first thing in the morning is something I would like to try.
Right. You should try it. You should subscribe. nonpoliticalnews.com. It goes out in your mailbox every day at 7 a.m. And as I say, most people do open it in the morning, first thing. It's that nice diversion from the political bombardment. And you do get a snapshot as to what is going on elsewhere. There is a world outside of politics.
Really?
Right.
You never think so in this environment.
There are
You
other
really
things going on.
And I think it's interesting that you said you have just as many conservatives as you do liberals reading and consuming your newsletter.
Yeah, I think the conservatives like it because they're tired of liberals yakketing, and the liberals like it because they are looking for
Yeah, in all
something else.
defense, when the press covers the president, it's all an outrage. So,
It's all an outrage.
well, yeah, whether you're liberal or conservative, it gets tiring very fast.
Yep. I like to say this is content for conversation, not content for animosity.
Oh,
There's my
great
tagline.
tagline. That is an excellent,
Well, on that note,
excellent tagline.
nonpoliticalnews.com. Make sure you catch it. Thank you so much
Thanks
for joining
so much
us.
for having me.
Thank you, Vera.
Next up, we have two guests from Mercer PeoplePro, an on-demand human resource service. Amit Loungani is the business leader at Mercer PeoplePro, as well as a professor of public service at NYU. She's joined by Sharon Salmon, a Mercer PeoplePro consultant, and they're here to talk about their business and how human resource consultants fill vital business needs for emerging businesses. Welcome to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So HR, it's neither human nor resourceful to many of us, but it's necessary. Why is it so important?
You know, I think the funny thing is HR has this crazy stigma to it. I mean, most people think about Toby from The Office, right? And there's so much more to it. You know, I'd love to call it, and what a lot of startups do is refer to it as, people operations or people strategy. And what's critical about it really is attracting and retaining the right talent for your company to grow.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people don't really appreciate human resources now. It seems like everything when it comes to like submitting a resume and everything is automatic. And when I was trying to look for a job a year or two ago, I never really heard back from a person. I got an automatic email, and it just felt automated.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing in the marketplace, especially with startups and small businesses, is they're thinking about that experience a lot earlier on. It's really, and the kind of mantra is you treat your employees just like you treat your customers, with that same level of respect, that same level of customer experience that you'd give to your typical clientele. And so I think that's what's really unique about what the trends that are coming from small business and startups is really enhancing that experience and making sure there's a personal touch, because technology is just a tool to leverage, sort of people. And I think that's what people are starting to realize.
So Sharon, a lot of startups forget about HR. They're a startup, they don't have many resources. Where do you guys come in this formula?
Talent is your number one asset, but it's also your number one liability. So I think a lot of companies look at it when there is a problem. And unfortunately, that's sometimes too late. That's when you're going to litigation. And it's actually really good to kind of think about it sooner, to prepare, to know that when you're hiring your first employee, there's a huge piece of coaching that has to come in. Did you set up your benefits in a compliant way? Are you federally, state, county, city compliant? And those things can actually save you tens of thousands of dollars down the road. So we can actually do kind of a legal audit and make sure that, you're taken care of, that your boxes are checked. We can also help you with your coaching, your training, making sure the employees are really engaged, having that personal touch, making sure that they do feel like the culture is engaging and happy. We support in all facets of HR, so it's kind of exciting.
When exactly did you guys discover this need for consulting businesses when it comes to HR? How did you know that there was a problem here or a gap?
Yeah, great question. So we're backed by Mercer, which is the largest human resources consulting firm in the world, 22,000 employees, huge. And what was great is our CEO, Julio Portalatin, really had the foresight to create an innovation hub, a place that was outside of our core business to pursue disruptive innovation. So I was fortunate enough to be tapped on the shoulder to join that initiative. And, kudos to him. He really gave us, a lot of freedom of what to pursue. And when we started doing our research and investigating and talking to clients, there were really three things that led us down the path of PeoplePro. One was this massive rise in the on-demand economy. So as consumers, we've all heard of Uber and Netflix and Seamless, and we really started scratching our heads to say, what would this look like if we captured the core elements of those apps and applied it to professional services? And in tandem with that, we usually you have flex work. That was also on the rise. So I think we read a stat that 40% of the workforce was slated to be freelancers by 2020. And we thought we'd put our own twist to that. And we started calling up our alumni, so consultants that left Mercer to be full-time parents, graduate students, retirees, and said, hey, if you had a chance to work flexibly on projects that you wanted to work on whenever you wanted to, would you be interested? And 9 out of 10 said, yeah, we'd love to. And then the last piece of the story really is around feedback. We were talking to businesses, and they were telling us that from a benefits perspective, we have great brokers, we know what we're doing. However, when it comes to attracting and retaining the right talent from a compensation standpoint, from a communication standpoint, talent management, there wasn't necessarily a resource to tap into. So between the on-demand economy, flex work, and customer feedback, that's what led us down the path to create Mercer.
So employees are becoming flexible. Companies need to show that same flexibility, and you guys offer those services.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it's expensive to have your own human resources person.
That's true.
It really, and I feel like I've worked in a lot of startups as kind of an afterthought. It's like, oh, this is our CTO / human resources /
Yeah, it's usually how it
gets us
goes.
coffee during break / Walks the office dog.
Yeah, they're, you know, startups are definitely, every single person on that exec team is a jack of all trades, right? And I think what we're realizing and what we're helping our clients realize is that you don't, at the point that you're at, you definitely have HR issues, but maybe not enough to hire a full-time person. So we're also able to provide as
Who doesn't have HR? I feel like when I hear the term HR, I'm scared.
Everything sort of, you know, time freezes and everybody gets scared. And I think what's nice is we can, you know, kind of be that virtual extension of your team until you're ready. And even when you hire somebody, you still have an extra pair of hands.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
So next, we'd like to welcome Laura Lemle, the founder of the NVLD Project, a nonprofit group dedicated to supporting people affected by a nonverbal learning disability. Now, the organization was inspired by Laura's daughter. Laura also runs the Lemle Real Estate Group and sits on the boards of the Promise Project and the Graduate School of Psychology at Yeshiva University. Welcome and tell us more about your nonprofit.
Hi. I started my nonprofit approximately in 2013, and it was inspired by my daughter, who was diagnosed at age 5 with a nonverbal learning disability. And unfortunately, NVLD, that's the abbreviation, is not in the diagnostic nomenclature, and so it's very poorly understood.
So what does that mean, diagnostic nomenclature?
It's not an official diagnosis, so that you don't get reimbursed in terms of insurance. You don't get an official IEP in schools because it's not formally recognized, and it's not, you can't look it up in the, it's called the DSM, that's the abbreviation. So how do you identify it if, you know? If it's not in
Yeah, exactly.
I know, it's a catch-22. It's also a catch-22 marketing, this nonprofit. It's understood by a lot of clinicians and professionals out there. So we have a website, and we get emails from all over the world. So we're finding out it's really being diagnosed all over the world. But then what do you do about it when you get the diagnosis? And that's really the issue.
Wow, and that's where your organization comes into play.
Yeah, because my daughter didn't get the proper education because there wasn't the right schools for her, and it inspired me to want to try to help other people, because this population does exist and they're underserved because of the unfortunate circumstances that it's not officially recognized.
So describe it just for someone who doesn't know what a nonverbal disability is.
Okay. Well, that's the other issue. It's a horrible name. People think that you're actually nonverbal and actually.
Right. That was my first reaction when we were. It was like, there's no speaking, or. I
know, and so then people say NVLD, nonverbal, and you say no, they're not mute. They're actually quite verbal, and the deficit is in the nonverbal area. So it's.
So they speak very well.
Yes, they speak very well, and they often learn how to read early and decode early. Their comprehension isn't often commensurate with their abilities to decode.
It's more of the social skills.
And it's getting the big picture. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's the catch-22, because we're really, partnering with Columbia Medical Center, Department of Psychiatry, to really understand it, diagnose it. We're supporting research there. And we actually just supported a consensus meeting there in May to really bring in experts on NVLD to try to come up with a working definition that everybody agrees upon. But they are very verbal, and we're really looking into it. So,
were you surprised that there weren't an efficient amount of resources to help your daughter at that time?
Was I surprised?
Yes.
I was frustrated, and it was isolating, because it's like a journey that you feel like you're going on by yourself. And so I wasn't surprised because it wasn't recognized. I just was, and I was really, really trying to figure out how to deal with her in an effective way and give her the proper education. So,
can you describe your daughter?
Sure. She's now in her mid-20s.
Okay.
She's very tenacious, and she really compensated quite well for all of her academic issues that she dealt with. She was an excellent student, but socially it was really a hard journey for her. And she was in a mainstream school, and she didn't have friends when she was older, and it was a lonely journey in a lot of ways.
You feel like in the past people had, a variety of labels for something like this, and now people say, do they confuse this diagnosis with something like something on the spectrum or anything like that?
I don't think anybody confused my particular daughter, but I do think that people sometimes think NVLD doesn't exist or that it is on the spectrum.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons we're supporting research, to distinguish what it really is, because you really do have to be in some ways agnostic to find out what the results are of research.
But there's so much stuff in our world that doesn't really have a typology that we're still discovering. And,
Right.
nonverbal learning disabilities is just one of those things. And it's like when we have a problem, we expect to go to the experts and say, here's our problem, please help me solve it. And a lot of times they don't have answers.
That's true. And I don't think they have answers for this yet. So
What advice would you give another mother who discovers that her daughter or son has a nonverbal learning disability? What would you tell them or share with them?
well, I would say that, we have a website, so you should go to our website at www.nvld.org. But I think you should also consult with professionals and communicate. I mean, one of the reasons I also started this is it's really important to have a conversation and not be isolated. And so you want to feel part of a community, and you really want to try to find the right schools and communicate.
Have teachers and schools been receptive to aiding the progress of NVLD?
I think there are schools that really are receptive to welcoming these children and these adolescents, but I do think more needs to be understood about how to effectively educate them.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an education for me.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you. Our next guest, Adam Enbar, founded the Flatiron School, a coding boot camp here in New York City. He's also involved with CRV, an early-stage venture capital firm. He has a lot of experience in the startup space and previously worked in the real estate development here in New York City. Welcome, Adam, and tell us more about the Flatiron School and why coding camp might be a great resource for older adults.
Well, thank you for having me. We started Flatiron School back in 2012. We saw a big problem, essentially, that higher education is broken. College, it used to be the best investment you can make, and it's just really not true anymore. Kids are going into more and more student debt, and average salaries are dropping for college grads. Employment is going down. It's kind of crazy, especially how expensive it is. So we started these programs that offer 3 to 5 month really intensive educational experiences. Students come here all day, every day, and they leave ready for a job as a software engineer. So it's great for the students, and obviously it's great for companies that are really struggling to fill these jobs. You see unemployment on one side and really high-paying, great jobs available that can't be filled.
Absolutely. So at what age do you start admitting students to enter into this program?
It's all over the map. We've had students ranging from 20 to over 50. Basically, I don't know about you, but when I was in college, I didn't really think about studying computer science. I
I still am not thinking about it, but I don't have those skills. So.
Well, that's what people think. There's
Right.
this stigma to it that it's this loner thing that you have to kind of be born in the Matrix to figure it out. But it's totally not true. It's actually more creative than anything else. You're making stuff. The best products and the best engineers are not people who know how to solve some algorithm faster. They're people who know how to build things that can connect to people emotionally, that can solve a real problem. So anybody can do this, and it's really just about, we've kind of failed to tell people that this is a great and creative field, and it's a great option for people. And so nobody studies it in college, and you have, like I said, tons of great jobs available, tons of companies that are dying to hire, but they can't find talent. And so the majority of our students come to us, whether it's after college or long after their first or second career, and realize, you know what, I've been a lawyer, I've been, doing XYZ, or I've even been unemployed, and I've realized that I want to make something. I want to actually create something, put it out in the world, and have people use it. And this is a great career for that.
So I actually had a friend who called me, and I recommended that he go to coding camp, and he's in it right now.
Oh, that's
Wow.
And my understanding is that coding's everywhere. So this whole idea that if you go off to coding boot camp, that you're going to end up working for a .com, those skills are applicable to nearly every part of the economy now.
Yeah, I don't think you can think of a single industry that's not entirely controlled by code. I mean, there's a laptop in front of you, right? You're a news organization. Code flies airplanes. Code controls cars. Code dictates how you shop online and how you buy airline tickets. There's nothing that's controlled by code. So there's this stigma of like, yeah, if you're a coder, you're working at Silicon Valley, working on some really complicated stuff. But the reality is that it is literally part of every single industry, no matter what you want to do. Actually, we partnered with Carly Kloss recently to start coding camps for high school girls around the country. And we brought in all these partners like Vogue and WeWork and all these amazing companies that provide that have these jobs available because they also need technology to run their companies.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I find that is truly fascinating is something that you said in the beginning. Like, our education system now isn't really working in terms of where the market is going. Like, you spend 4 years in college, and by the time you graduate, there's a whole new world out there. What you're learning in those 4 years may not be as applicable to what the job market wants or
Selena,
demands.
you sure you don't work for Gen FKD? Sounds like what we preach every day. Please, by all means, Adam.
Yeah, no, that's the problem. I mean, even if college was working, which unfortunately it's not for many people, right? The majority of students go into a lot of debt and don't get jobs that need a degree. But even if it was working, we live in a world where things are just changing way too fast. And so the idea of like, I'm going to learn for 4 years and then work for the rest of my life doesn't make sense anymore, right? We have to continue learning as we evolve in our careers. And so these intensive programs that can really give you a skill quickly and prepare you to either launch your career or progress in your career are going to become more and more important.
Okay, Adam, rapid fire because we're running out of time. What would a typical intensive class cover? And are you worried the robots are going to take over with all this coding?
What would a class cover? Well, we teach full stack web development, so software engineering, basically how to build apps.
It's about 6 weeks, right? 8 weeks?
Our courses range from 3 months to 8 months.
Oh, okay, it's a little longer than that.
Person, But yeah, it's really intense. Students are there all day, every day, late nights, weekends.
Wow.
Am I worried about the robots? No, not really. I mean, if robots take over, the last jobs that will exist will be the coders because they're the ones building the robots.
Unless they build themselves. We don't know where their intelligence might expand to. But thank you so much, Adam. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Our next two guests founded Chicapreneurs to foster real relationships and serve the needs of creatives, doers, and social innovators who are leading independent venturers between New York City and Puerto Rico. We welcome Michelle Pérez-Kenderish and Dyanis Jesús, I'm so sorry, co-founders of Creators Means Business. Welcome, ladies, and tell us more about your business.
Hi, good morning. So I'm Dyanis, by the way. I know those names are kind of tricky. And this is my partner, Michelle. So Chicapreneurs is really the community arm of our main business, which is Creatives Mean Business. So we're the co-founders of Creative Mean Business. That is a consultancy bringing creativity to business through different tools, right? We use design thinking, we use communications, we use innovation, and ultimately social good.
Wow.
And, you know, you do a lot of business between Puerto Rico and New York, and Puerto Rico is in desperate need of entrepreneurism.
Yes, it is. There's an important economic crisis. We see a lot of young people leaving the island. And what we're trying to do and what we were inspired to do, Chicapreneurs, was we kept seeing this flow of creatives that we are still very connected to the island, and we travel there on business a lot. So we would meet the same people, and eventually in 6 months we would run into them in New York. And so
it's the same crowd.
They were super, but they were not connected to each other. And so our goal was, well, there are these amazing women doing really cool things, developing companies. How do we connect them to each other so we can foster social capital and knowledge sharing amongst ourselves? Because really, at the end of the day, you know that this is a lot about being a solopreneur. And so to spend all that time alone in your head, how do you do it and create, you know, ventures and partnerships and relationships that can help you grow your business?
Well, entrepreneurism is hard.
It is hard, and I mean, I think part of that community also inspired us to follow our own, you know, entrepreneurial ideas. So that's why I was talking about Creatives Mean Business, because it ultimately allows us to continue building that community and supporting those other entrepreneurs that are working between Puerto Rico and New York. And also be a part of the entrepreneurial community in New York that is so important. So right now we are finding opportunities not only in Puerto Rico but also here. And we have one very exciting new project that we want to tell you about today.
Yeah,
what's that?
We just co-authored our first publication. We are passionate about the creative economy and the creative industries. So we were selected by the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, D.C., to do a mapping of creatives ecosystems in Latin America and the Caribbean. So we featured 50 innovators. And what's exciting about this is that you only hear the negative things coming out of these countries. You don't hear about people who are innovating and creating companies with social impact. So the goal and the bank's mission is, who out there is creating companies that can improve lives?
Absolutely. Now, is the ultimate goal to, I guess, like re-innovate or start, like help the economy in Puerto Rico in any way?
Yes, so I think, there's already a booming, ecosystem there of entrepreneurship, technology, and creativity. So we want to be a part of that. And I think the role of us, that live outside of the country is really to, somehow bring back our knowledge and everything that we have access here, right? So the projects that we support, like the one Michelle was talking about, kind of portray not only Puerto Ricans, outside and the impact that we can make with our creative work, but also examples of how that's happening in Latin America, where the conditions are more similar to Puerto Rico than maybe, the United States. So we hope to bring attention to those stories and really use those stories to inspire what's possible in our country and get that new generation of creators and entrepreneurs really inspired by, the possibility of not only making a living with their talent, but also supporting, the country and supporting social and sustainability and other good causes.
So creatives, so much talent. A lot of people have trouble monetizing that creativity. So what do you tell people who are creative in whatever corner of the world they're in, whether they're in Paraguay or they're in Kansas? You're a creative. You want to make a living out of it. How do you do it?
How do you do it? I mean, you have to be really focused and determined, but I think that our goal with this publication and the work that we did with the bank is really to demystify that. We have 50 examples of innovators and creatives who are actually monetizing those ideas, right? So they exist. Our mission is to make that very visible so that a lot more people are willing to take the risks of starting businesses and not being raised to be a good professional in a company where that model no longer exists, as your previous guest indicated.
So what are your individual talents? Just break them down for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, Michelle and I actually met. We have a very similar, kind of career path, which is why I think we kind of connected immediately. So communications, strategy, design thinking, research. So all of these tools are really, really in demand today. And I think ultimately bringing creativity to any industry, any sector is really important right now for innovation. The world is changing, and we believe that these skills that we have are really applicable, and we've seen it with our clients, are really necessary and applicable to a range of, industries and organizations. So,
and we both work on both sides of the equation. I mean, we have, we work with law firms, we work with international organizations, we work with traditional companies so that they can have happier employees because they're engaged, they're using that creativity to become entrepreneurs within their organizations. But we also work with museums, we also work with, stylists and photographers and people. So what is great about how we approach it is we take on those big clients so we can have the little clients that we can really connect to and feel that we can have an impact with. And so back to your question as to what do we tell an entrepreneur?
Exactly.
Sometimes you're going to have that job that you don't really love the same way so that you can hire yourself to do the projects that you're really passionate about. And that's where it starts. Our mantra is start by doing, and you figure it out along the way. You're not always going to have all of the answers.
You would be surprised how similar everyone's advice is.
No. I hope we don't sound like one big cliche.
No, it's fantastic. No, the narrative
really
is consistent.
Entrepreneurs usually have the same thing because
it is what it takes. I mean, it's really about persevering and doing what you love. And it sounds cliche, but it is what that's how you do it.
Dyanis and Michelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Thank you. Our last guest is a media personality, author, lifestyle consultant specializing in personal and professional development. Klay S. Williams is the founder of Plan Enterprises, a firm that helps clients close the gap between their past and present self and helps them live what Klay calls their Plan A. Welcome to the show, Klay.
Thanks for having me.
And also, a fun fact, Klay is also one of Black Enterprises B.E. Martin Men of Distinction of 2017. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Growing up in Detroit, Michigan, me and my dad used to go to barbershop every Sunday, and we would go and there would be a Black Enterprise magazine. And one day I was like, oh, I'm going to be on the cover. I'm going to be a part of that. So it was a really great
So it's a
honor.
dream come true for you.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is awesome. That is awesome.
So tell us a little bit about your book. There is only Plan A. What about Plan B, C, and Triple Z?
Well, it kind of came from twofold. I was studying at Princeton Seminary to become a pastor, and I was working at Polo Ralph Lauren at the same time. And so I said to myself, there has to be a way that I could juxtapose my love for nurturing the interior with styling the exterior, and so Plan A was kind of born from that. And the other part of it is, I heard so many different clients, friends, and just people in general have questions about, how is it that I obtain the life that I really want to have? And I would hear them say, oh, but I'm doing this for my boss, I'm doing this for my husband, for my wife. There's only Plan A when it comes to them, but not when it came to their self. And so I said, what if we switch that around and make you the focal point of that and discovering how to live your very best life from a there's only Plan A perspective?
So I have a question for you. If you were initially studying to become a pastor, was that your Plan A? Are you on Plan B now?
It's really interesting. So it's a part of the journey. And so I had to go to that experience so that not only could I gain the academic preparation to sort of undergird the experiential life experiences or whatever, but I had to sort of have the actual counseling background before I decided to actually become. So it became part of my journey rather than one or the other.
Oh, okay. That's awesome.
I think we all kind of have that. I think we have different stops along our journey, don't we?
Right, and it's all a part of your Plan A is where I'm coming from. Each experience that you have is prepping and stepping you up for what it is you're supposed to do in life. And if you look and see what's the lesson you need to learn during these experiences, you would really be able to sort of figure out the impact of how to use it for your next steps.
So how would you advise people to even get in touch with their Plan A or their purpose, especially people who feel like they're just floating and life is passing them by?
Right. First thing I would say is pay attention to your personal blueprint. Life speaks to us in all kinds of different ways, but sometimes we really truly ignore what it is that it's telling us. And so that's the first thing I would say. The second part of it is listen to your own voice. A lot of times you get stuck with what your mom wants you to do, what your dad wants you to do, or these career opportunities that you've been sort of just dumped into rather than paying attention to what it is that you particularly choose to do for yourself.
Wow, I think we all do ignore ourselves. I ignored myself for years about media. I was like, there's no money in it, I'm never gonna make it, and I guess it was my Plan A in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure you can look back and say things were setting you up for this moment that you're experiencing now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Evidently we have, Holly Harrison, Klay Williams and Plan A changed my life, so happy to see him on a platform of this nature. And James Rollins Silverman tuning in from St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands to see you.
Wow.
So you have some widespread fanfare.
Holly was actually a client of mine. She's a Met Opera singer, and during the time, her mother and her best friend died 3 weeks of each other, and she's trying to pursue this career in New York City. And so when we came together, we had to figure out not only how to nurture her calling in life and her talent, but also how to heal herself from the past. And these two things were one and the same.
So you do use your spiritual training then. It looks
absolutely.
like to help people deal with grief and whatnot.
And holistically. And so my work meets people where they are. So I'm able to speak to agnostics, atheists, religious community, conservatives, liberals. I use their language to set them up for where they should be in life.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about the book. What can people expect to learn from Plan A?
Right. And so sometimes you have people who are writing books who've never experienced anything, and they're these experts. But this book is about my journey towards discovering not only my work, but how I came to New York City with $500 and did the whole couch surfing for a long period of time, and how the principles of what I did not really want to go through, being very uncomfortable, has set me up to do what it is I'm doing today. And so all the principles that I learned, everything, the techniques and all the things I live by, my book talks about all those things.
Okay, we have a very important question here. How do you know when you have discovered your true purpose in life?
Right.
Does like a bell go off or what happens?
There, in biblical context, there is this passage that says there's a peace that passes all understanding. When you are in the space of doing what it is that you want to do, the outside voices, the fears, everything in one particular moment, however that happens for that person, it's dispelled. And you are in the space of, I feel fulfilled in this, I feel challenged in this, I feel excited in this moment, and that's how you sort of know where you're supposed to be.
Right. And I think that when people actually do discover that, sometimes fear will say you can't pursue it. Like David's saying, like, you know, you're not going to make a living out of that. You're not going to be able to monetize your passion. What do you say to those fears?
Well, there's a couple of things. I think people need to sort of understand that their purpose may not be attached to what their moneymaker is. You know, there may be someone who maybe your 9 to 5 is being a corporate attorney. Then after that, you may go and do volunteering work at Dress for Success, for example, which is one of my clients. You know, or it could be that your purpose really is your moneymaker. And so I think you have to kind of figure out what is it for you.
I didn't know Dress for Success is one of your clients. I love the organization as well.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Well, Klay, thank you so much for joining us for our regular Bookster segment. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And as always, we'd like to thank you for watching Bold Business on Facebook Live, and thank you to all the people who make this show happen, including Black Enterprise, Bold, Gen FKD, Bookster, many more, Selena, Carrie, everyone in this room, our wonderful techies, etc. And of course, be sure to watch Bold TV on Friday at 10 a.m. with your usual suspects, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.